Good morning, Coldwell Banker, George Realty. Thank you for attending our Friday training on commercial purchase agreement car format. Today I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to go over some of the highlights of congratulations, your offer is accepted, and what you need to be doing as an agent. This may be a refresher for some, or some of you may be very experienced in commercial, and to some of you it may be new. But there's several things to look out for, so we're going to go over that. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Okay, so the grid section on, and I have it attached here to the commercial purchase agreement, is going to be very familiar to you all. It's going to look pretty much like the residential grid. So I don't want to go into detail on that. I'm more concerned with what happens once you get your offer accepted. So have your BRBC signed by the buyer, and it is a separate compensation agreement that you will later deliver to escrow. That's how they pay you commission. And that's outlined in paragraph 22D of this agreement. Make sure that the people you are writing offers for have been vetted by a commercial lender. That they've provided some kind of a commitment letter or pre-approval letter, but make sure before you ride with the people or show them properties that, number one, they've signed your BRBC, and number two, that they've been vetted by a commercial lender, because there's a higher down payment structure and all of that to buy commercial. Okay. Oh, and what else? Yeah. And SBA loans. And the other thing you want to make sure is this money, is some of the funding coming from a 1031 exchange. So those are things that you're just going to do ahead of time. Maybe they have some money in a 1031 exchange account that they need to spend. Okay. So congratulations, you've been accepted. So once you're accepted in escrow, the very first thing is to make sure that the lender has a fully executed contract, including addendums, counteroffers. That slows the process if you don't provide them fully executed documents. So you want to make sure that you're very fast on that. Get it over to the lender right away. Of course, escrow as well. But this will save the lender from having to come back and say, hey, this is an initial DAT. So make sure that you're inspecting your own documents and that you have fully executed on all of them. So when we get into escrow, there's some things that you're like a conductor. So there's some very sophisticated buyers that may not need you to be the conductor for them, but these are the things that I would be mentioning. So on a commercial property, they're going to want to do a building inspection. But outside of that, maybe the building inspector is not a roof inspector or HVAC inspected company as well. So you want to make sure that these three components here, this is, of course, up to the buyer, but you want to mention, hey, you want a building inspection, roof inspection, HVAC. Make sure that you're asking them that. In addition, did you write into the offer that you want a phase 1 environmental inspection and who would pay for it? If you didn't, you can still do that during your inspection period. I know Peter believes in the phase 1 environmental inspections very strongly. So make sure that you are covering these things with your buyer as you show them your experience and kind of direct a little bit. Another thing is the building ADA compliant. You don't have to going and ask the listing agent because, they haven't inspected the building, but these are things that the inspector should point out. If not, ask them if they're going to be looking at that as well. I would go to the city, not me, but I would direct the buyer to go to the city. I think that's down here somewhere. Any permits on that particular property, make sure that they're going to the building counter themselves and having them pulled and getting a copy so they can review them during their inspection period. So the following items here on number 6 shall be complete prior to close of escrow unless it was otherwise agreed to. Required and approved fire extinguishers, sprinklers, hoses, and this is referenced in paragraph 10.B4. So be clued in on that. If you want to make another agreement, sellers, if the seller wants that to be pushed to the buyer, make sure that that is documented in your offer or your counter offer. Paragraph 12, tenant-related disclosures. There is a box in the grid, and it is paragraph R as in Ralph, that I recommend that you always check. You're going to check for tenant estoppels and income and expense statements. It's very easy to miss because it's a little tiny checkbox, but always make sure that you're checking for the estoppel and the income and expense statements. What do you do with the estoppels? Of course, you turn them over to the buyer. However, the buyer, once they get the leases, should be reviewing the estoppels against those leases to make sure that it looks like it's matching up, okay? So it's not just a document that sits, it should be something that should be reviewed against the leases. If there are any leases, there may not be a tenant, it may be a vacant warehouse, but at any rate, if there is, make sure that they review that against the leases. Another thing is we can't assume property lines. If there's a question, you'll see some properties butted up to each other and no fencing, and it just goes on, and the parking lots, you know, may go together, and you don't really know where the property line is. So you could suggest that the buyer get a survey done. So, you know, don't assume that all of those 30 parking spots that you're staring at in between two buildings belong to the building that the buyer's purchasing. Make sure that you're asking the listing agent to ask the seller regarding, you know, that land or those parking spaces. But in addition, the buyer can also have a survey if they wish. So we already went over this about going to the city counter and asking for permits. Assignment's an important one. So if a buyer is assigning to a wholly owned entity of their own in existence at the time of the agreement, then the buyer has that right. If it is an assignment to another entity that is not the original buyer, it will require the seller's consent on that. And it says right in this contract in paragraph 26, because we always get questions on this. Oh, do I really have to have the new buyer initial all the disclosures, everything, and sign them? Yes, it says it right in the contract. So because you don't want to not have them initial it, because they could say, oh, I didn't know that, I didn't see that. And always remember that any total or partial assignment of this agreement, it does not relieve the original buyer of the obligations unless that's negotiated. So that's something to remember on assignments. Don't forget, even if it's an outside entity from the original buyer, unless you negotiate it, they're still responsible. Okay. So let me go down over the grid. You're going to notice, and I'm going to stop at the grid and take questions, or because Peter's here, so he's a great source of information. So the grid here is going to look very familiar to all of us. The purchase price, close of escrow, initial deposit, if there's going to be an increased deposit. And I always mention in training, 3% is the cap for residential. Commercial does not have the cap. So you want to be mindful of that. Seller to credit buyer, if there was anything like that, and it automatically will default to your closing costs. Here's where you check for your commission. Check the box here and put the percent here. And there's a buyer compensation affirmation that they did have an agreement with you and it's valid, etc., just like in the residential agreements. So loans, here you see this goes 17 days in the appraisal 17. you would venture to guess that on a commercial loan, it could take a bit longer. Yes, because Kenny just went through this. So make sure that you are looking at those contingency periods on that grid and adjusting them after you speak with the lender to the days that they would need to close the deal. So Kenny's recommending 25 days at least, because he just closed a large one. Yeah, as Kenny said, we need to protect the buyer, but make sure you're talking to your lender and you're clued in on these contingency periods. Also, the insurance, it's going to 17 days. You may not have time in 17 days to find it. So adjust these days as you need it. So those are things you don't want to forget. You want to take a look at all of these contingency periods and make sure you're adjusting according to the deal and what the lender is telling you and what the insurance agent is telling your client. Okay, so this is all very familiar to us. I want to show you that checkbox here on natural hazards disclosure. There's an environmental box here. That is not a phase one. However, within the natural hazard disclosure report, it does give you more information and it may be $20, $30 more. I really recommend that you check that. Even on residential, I always check that box. When I'm ordering the NHD report, I always ask for it to include environmental. So we have a little more information. So here, Q2 environmental survey, who's going to pay if you want that? For me, I want to put phase one here. I don't like it that it just says survey. So I would probably type in phase one, but at any rate here, you can put seller or buyer, or you can do it during your inspection, but it's very important. Okay. So this is all pretty standard. Now here is the section on these additional tenancy documents. Now, if there's a tenant, always check for a tenant estoppel. You need to bring that in. And you always want your income and expense statement. So check those boxes, okay? Okay, because Kenny just said the lender will need these anyway. So make sure you're checking. They're going to ask for it. So those are just the things that I wanted to go over today. And I want to leave it open for discussion on any questions or comments people have regarding commercial offers. We have Peter here. I'm here. So I'm going to open it up to questions.
One of my questions, Michelle, was in the loan part. You said that, and especially Kenny says that 25 days, right? So you have to coordinate like we did in the residential. I think it's kind of like that. We have to coordinate with the lender and the insurance company to say more or less how many days of contingency, right?
Right. You have to be talking to the lender ahead of time. Ahead of writing your offer, you should already have that conversation and have the buyer have a conversation with their favorite insurance provider to see how long that would take and if they can get insurance through them so they can be managing which insurance company they'd need to contract with on this deal. Are there any other questions?
Michelle, as a buyer, do we still do the phase one and phase two?
So Baxen's asking, as the buyer, should the buyer do a phase one and phase two? That is up to the buyer, but we do recommend that you do a phase one. Phase two would be if they need corrective actions, and you'll know by reading the phase one report. So especially, industrial, also be looking around, like we've always said, look around. Is there a dry cleaner near? Is there a gas station near? These are indicators, but I know Peter can probably address it further, but he does believe that we should do the phase one environmental.
Yes, I definitely should do a phase one. Because especially when you have a dry cleaner on their premises, always always do a phase one and make sure that you don't have any phase two work that need to be done. Otherwise, after close of escrow, it'll be a lot of trouble with the buyer.
Yeah.
You can put phase two, but anyway, the listing agent always counterback,
Yeah, Kenny was saying you can also ask for phase two, but normally you can, but I guess it would be if applicable because there may not be any phase two once you obtain that phase one report.
Does usually the phase one recommend a phase two? If you look at a phase one report, do they say we recommend a phase two, or just phase one would just be suffice?
No, they're going to recommend if you need to go to phase two on the report. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Oh, I just like to know, the seller, do they usually have phase one ready or handy or updated?
Paxson is asking, will the seller normally have a phase one report handy or updated? Not necessarily, no.
No, not at all.
You
have to request for one.
Yeah, you request.
Yeah,
the seller.
especially for the lenders. If it is a commercial property, the lender should definitely require first phase one, or if it's not so obvious. They first search the register. If they have the register saying that there's any a need for phase one, that they don't need to get the phase one, but usually they require a phase one in order for the loan to process.
Yeah, so get it especially you have a loan, but even a cash buyer, you still want to advise them about the phase one. Yeah.
That's right.
So proceeding an commercial purchase agreement, you can do an LOI, a letter of intent, just outlining the top line points. However, you can just go straight to offer because some people were asking me recently, well, do I have to do an LOI first? No, you can go straight into an offer. That is up to you. Some people like to do the LOI because it's non-binding and they can kind of see where the seller is. But some agents will tell you just to submit your offer. Okay, so it's not that hard and fast that you have to do an LOI first. Are there any other questions? Is anybody working on any commercial deals that's in the group here right now? I know Kenny closed a couple. Yeah. So one thing I want to say, and this is off this topic, but if some of you here did not hear Brian Smith speak on Wednesday, we do have a recording and it's posted on our YouTube. My goodness, listen, he's our E&O attorney. He's a litigator. I don't ever miss when he's speaking because he has so much information. So if any of you missed it, please pop into our YouTube account and watch Brian Smith. He was up on Wednesday. Okay.
Michelle, in regards to getting into the YouTube account, do we just type in QFGR training?
No, there's some links that Rhett sent out. I can have him re-forward again to our website link and our YouTube. So we'll do another e-blast to make sure that everybody sees that link. And the way Rhett has organized the videos, it's by date. Okay. So you have to remember when the date was, and Brian was just here on Wednesday. Wednesday, yeah. Any other comments, Peter?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so it's very quiet other than in the room. So this was a short one. I'm going to conclude it. And remember, you're never alone at Coldwell Banker George Realty. If you need help when you're going through a deal or starting off on an offer, reach out to us. We're here for you. We will help you as much as we can. If you want help on an LOI from us, please draft it first and then let us look at your draft, okay? So we're here to help with any of your transaction questions or looking over an offer if you want that type of help. Okay?
Recording?
Yes, this is recorded. Okay, thank you all very much, and I wish you all a beautiful weekend. Thank you for attending.
Okay, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Yeah, have a nice
Bye-bye,
weekend.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Valentine.
Oh, Kenny's saying happy Valentine's to everybody.
Bye.